As you watch me, you probably wonder, what is he thinking? I'm not thinking anything. Only when I say something, you hear my language. And whatever you imagine is happening when I don't speak, it's just all the result of your way of talking in which you do not listen to yourself. I listen to myself while I speak. And that's how embodied language works. And yeah, it is very simple. Embodied language is about, of course, overt language. There's no covert language. So, in this video, I am just going to address the basic principles of embodied language. So, embodied language is when you speak and listen simultaneously. It's just as simple. And you have all the time in the world to express your embodied language. So there's no rush, there's no tension, there's no compulsion to say this or to say that. You only say something when you want to say something. And obviously, when you say what you want to say, you're able to say what you're saying. And of course, when you do that, when you have embodied language, in the first case, in the first phase, so to speak, you have embodied language by yourself. Because that's how you familiarize yourself with the difference between not listening to yourself while you speak, which is the way of speaking that you're used to, disembodied language, and embodied language, where you listen to yourself while you speak. So in the first phase, you just talk with yourself, that's all. By yourself, just like I do right now. And you either find that overt behavior to be self-reinforcing or not. Yeah, you like it or not. You enjoy it or not. You want to go on with it or not. And so, if it is self-reinforcing, then it is embodied language. If it is not self-reinforcing, if it is self-punishing, like you are used to, yeah, that's why you don't talk with yourself, because your self-talk is negative. When you begin to listen to yourself, you hear something which you don't like to hear, of course. You got to stop that to be able to have embodied language, where you begin to express what is self-reinforcing. I express that while I'm just walking here by myself. And it's very simple. Everybody can do it. If you can talk, if you can hear yourself, then you can do it. And so that's the first part. I'm just going to sit here for a little while. This is a nice little spot. I'm going to let my bicycle lean like this. And this is a nice little tree to sit on with my feet here on this tree. Yeah. Take some time to talk and to further elaborate on the self-reinforcing aspects of embodied language. These wonderful effects which occur because you listen to yourself while you speak also allow you to be quiet and to notice that there is no language inside of you, of course. There's no mind. There's no inner language. It never existed. And so, if you have spent some time exploring this on your own, then maybe after the 4th of July, in a couple of months, we can talk and have embodied language together. But if you don't do that, it's not going to happen. I am not interested in your disembodied language. I'm only interested in embodied language. And I'm also not interested in doing anything to promote myself other than making these videos, writing occasionally on my on my Substack account or on my X account. I am not interested in doing anything to organize anything. Everything has to happen because of you. Basically, because I'm not going to do it for you. Nobody's going to do it for you. So if you're going to have embodied language with me, it all depends on you, whether you want that or not, whether you're going to do it or not, whether you take the steps that you need to take to be able to have embodied language with me. If you don't do it, it's fine with me. I'm already having embodied language by myself, and I will be having embodied language with those who are ready for it. I have full confidence in that. I'm not waiting for anyone. I find what I say more important than what anybody else says out there. Because the difference between disembodied language, in which we do not listen to ourselves while we speak, and embodied language, in which we listen to ourselves while we speak, that is the issue of our time. And yet, hardly anybody seems to care about this issue. But I do. And it's not about my credentials, whether I have a master's degree in psychology. Yes, I do have a master's degree, but it's not about that. I have 2 master's degrees, a master's of science and a master's of art. But so what? I speak on my own authority about this issue. It has nothing to do with my degree. I've always spoken on my own authority about this issue for the last 45 years. And I never got any credit for this from any kind of official source. The closest in getting some credit was perhaps my years of teaching at Butte College, where I was a psychology instructor. But even though I gave many seminars for the faculty and all my students knew about this, all my students were informed about what I call disembodied language and embodied language. In those days that I was teaching, I called it still noxious verbal behavior and sound verbal behavior, because I was still exploring the behavioral scientific the formulation, the behavioristics formulation of what this is. But also in the circle of behaviorists, even though I did get some people to talk with me, but there was never any real thorough going. When B.F. Skinner talks about radical behaviorism, he actually means thoroughgoing behaviorism. But, there was never any thoroughgoing involvement of anybody in embodied language to be able to say like, wow, but this is really where it's at. And yes, if we are going to do it like I do, we're just going to be talking with ourselves. And the other person that we have historically been referring to, it turns out to be that the other person is just an aspect of ourselves that we have sort of just disconnected from because of the way in which we talk, in which we didn't listen to ourselves. And yeah, the illusion of inner language, that there is language inside of us, which we call our mind and our thinking, is just another aspect of our disembodied language in which we were not listening to ourselves. And yes, embedded in our illusion of inner language was the illusion of an external environment, where there is an inner and an outer. And all of that was just language, overt language, which was never properly addressed by listening to ourselves while we speak. Because what is the correct way of using language? That is the language in which we listen to ourselves while we speak. Obviously, if we do not listen to ourselves while we speak, if we try to get others to listen to us, or if we are only listening to others and not listen to ourselves, something is missing in our language. Something essential is missing. And what is missing is the connection that I am expressing, the truth which I am expressing, the reality which I am expressing. And of course, I'm expressing that with my ongoing embodied language, which is my language enlightenment. So now you have it all in your hand. Now you have the whole what is it? The whole concept, I hate to call it a concept, the whole description of languageology, because it's just a verbal description. Let's just not call it a concept. I have described to you what languageology is, the science of spoken communication, which is only known by what is called the N of one, where a single subject, you, begin to do what it takes to have embodied language. And you really recognize, okay, I wasn't listening to myself, and now I am speaking with myself, and I am doing what I need to do to have embodied language. And then I have it. Then I'm listening to myself, and then it just happens. It's very simple. Languageology is the science that we need to know in our individual lives to be free. Without languageology, freedom is just a pipe dream. We may have individual freedoms, but without the language of our individual freedom, there is no real freedom. And so this is why everybody is so conflicted and so stressed out and so upset and so whatever, carried away, because they don't have embodied language. They don't listen to themselves while they speak. And they endlessly want others to listen to them. I don't want you to listen to me. Sounds maybe weird, but it is true. I want you to listen to yourself. And of course, I want you to talk with yourself in such a way that you want to listen to yourself. If you do not talk in the way in which you like to hear yourself, then you don't want to hear yourself. So it's not about listening to me. It's not about listening to someone else. It's about listening to yourself. And I am doing that. My ongoing embodied language expresses my language enlightenment. And this is what it is. This is what it sounds like. This is what you would be saying if you were having ongoing embodied language. So I sum it up again. There's no inner language. I call it the illusion of inner language. There's no inner and outer. People have built a whole career on this. They call that attribution error, fundamental attribution error. That we either attribute a person's behavior to, I don't know, a person's personality, a person's, ego or something like that. Yeah. A person is presumably evil. Yeah. That's also part of that, of course, that there's an inner part of that person which is inherently rotten, evil. But no, there's no such thing as an inner behavior managing agent. There's no inner self. There is no inner me who speaks. There's no inner speaker who speaks. There's only speaking. And there is no inner behavior managing self. No, there's only behavior. So there's only the process, actually, of being alive without someone who is alive. Because that someone is part of that process. That someone disappears in that process. That someone enjoys that process. That someone is irrelevant in that process. That someone is actually overrated. Your identity is overrated. Yeah. And it causes nothing but problems. Yeah. So the inner and outer division, yeah, that whole issue of they call that situationalism, that then we can explain a person's behavior by the situation that he or she is in. Okay, is it because of the circumstances that we're in that we behave this way? Or is it innate? Is it because of something internal? Yeah? Yeah, dispositional. Is it dispositional or situational? It's all just bogus. These are bogus concepts. They are unscientific concepts. And regardless of whether we are talking about inner or outer, whether we're talking about situational or dispositional, we're just always only talking about language. It should be very obvious. So once we begin to adhere to the overt nature of language, we are transcending our problems. We are stepping out of our problems. We are radically putting behind us all the problems that were created and maintained by our disembodied language. And we will be able to see and hear what reality is like when we do not adhere to the illusion of inner language, when we do not adhere to the illusion of an internal and external environment, and when we do not adhere to a behavior managing internal self, an inner deity of sorts, because we have believed in an external deity, God in heaven or something, or a higher power, but we also have an inner deity, and that's our inner self, who presumably causes us to be the way we are. But there is no such entity. So here I am, sitting in this beautiful green area among these trees, which are, at their end, you could say, because these trees, these oak trees here, they are kind of like a dying kind of tree in this area. Eventually there will be nothing left but brush, because these trees, they are all on their way out, basically. And you see a lot of dead ones, therefore. But the grass is green because it has been raining really hard lately. And life goes on, so to speak, without some trees dying. And elsewhere maybe they grow again. But here, this is something I would like also to still address in this video. That nothing exists in the process of embodied language. Everything dissolves in the process of embodied language. And that is, of course, an expression of both our neural biology, our neural behavior, if you will. I can express this because my brain is working, because my body is working, my heart is beating, my lungs are, I'm inhaling oxygen, and I'm holding a phone in my hand here. This hand holds a phone, So my body is working, my mouth is moving, I'm flapping my mouth. But everything I'm saying, everything I'm describing, it just dissolves in this process. And so when you have embodied language, you always feel peaceful, totally at ease, totally serene, totally clean, totally relieved, totally unburdened. It couldn't be any other way. And this is a part of embodied language, which is the correct way of talking. And that's another aspect of embodied language, that it is the correct way of talking. Not listening to yourself while you speak is incorrect. So the correct way of talking is using your language in such a way that language doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. I mean, look, if I say, give this book to me, does that word book matter if you understand what a book is and you give that book to me, and I'm happy that you give it to me because I couldn't reach that book and you could, and you gave it to me because you were sitting so close to that book that you could give it to me, and you moved it over to me and I got it. So language, when it works as it is supposed to, it is not important. It is functional, it does what, it works, it is effective. And when it is effective, it doesn't matter. But we make a big deal about it, about communication, because it doesn't work. It's so true. Yeah. So this sense of dissolving in the process, it has to do also with your ability not to let go. You know, people say that, right? Oh yeah, it's about the ability to let go. No, it's not about the ability to let go. You cannot let go in disembodied language. In disembodied language, you talk about the willingness to let go, but you never let go. That's why you keep talking about it. In embodied language, you cannot hold on. And there's nothing to let go of. Yeah. So it is, in a sense, yeah, people have mentioned this before, you know. I do not want to call it that, actually. No, people have talked about this as dying in the moment. I'm not dying in the moment. I'm actually coming alive in the moment. Forget about dying. I mean, I'm not dying. I'm very much alive. And yes, one day I will be gone, and there will be no more words. There will be no more a voice to be heard. I will not anymore do any writing. I will no longer behave. And it's not me that was behaving. It was just behavior that was happening because it could. Yeah. This is another very crucially important aspect about embodied language, that it happens because it can happen. If it can happen, it will happen. And if it doesn't happen, then it simply means the circumstances are not good enough to make it happen. So if, for instance, you start talking with yourself and you keep telling yourself all kinds of things that you don't like it, you feel annoyed, you just go like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I what am I supposed to accomplish with this? Well, you're having all these difficult questions and you have all these doubts. Well, that's not embodied language. That cannot be embodied language. So why is it not happening? Well, because the circumstance in which embodied language happens was not yet created by you. And when do you create that circumstance? When you listen to yourself. Are you listening to yourself when you're saying things which you don't like to hear? No, you're not. You don't want to. And I don't blame you. Stop it already. Yeah? You can stop your own disembodied language you can stop saying the things that you don't want to hear. You can start saying the things that you like to hear. Or you can at least begin to explore what would possibly something that I can say to myself which I like to hear. Then you create circumstance in which you can have embodied language. Now, that's a nice little end note to conclude it. Huh? Okay.